So we are going to go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Aloni, and I'm with Schneps Media. Schneps Media is the largest local media company in Metro New York. We publish over 70 newspapers, magazines, websites, webinars, podcasts, and events throughout Queens, Brooklyn, the Bronx, Westchester, Manhattan, Long Island, and Philadelphia. Today, we're thrilled to be able to bring you about learning about Westchester County. And Westchester County in every area is unique. And the Westchester Living Team here today is Compass Westchester's #2 in the country. And in this webinar, its members will be discussing current local market data and what makes each neighborhood special to help guide you to find the perfect place to call home. I want to welcome our panelists. I'm going to introduce them and have them each share a little bit about themselves. First up, welcome to Sari Shaw. Sari is the co-founder and team lead of the Westchester Living Team. Welcome, Sari.
That would be the time to unmute, right?
Yes, please.
Hi, thank you. Thank you all for tuning in today. My name is Sari Shaw. Originally actually from Long Island, and chose very quickly not to return there. I've been with Compass since they came to Westchester in 2018 when Jen and I co-founded our team. And I live in Northern Westchester. I live in Chappaqua.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thanks.
So next, I'm happy to introduce Jennifer Ross, who is, as Sari said, co-founder and team lead of the Westchester Living Team. Welcome, Jen.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Pleasure to be here. Welcome to everyone else who's tuning in. As Sari mentioned, we co-founded the team when we joined Compass when they came to Westchester a couple of years ago. I am originally from Scarsdale, New York, and despite a brief foray in the college years and then years in Manhattan, spent the rest of my life in Westchester. My specialty is the Sound Shore, communities of Larchmont, Rye, Pelham, and also my hometown, Scarsdale. I'm the mom of 3 boys in addition to real estate, and pleasure to be here.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Now I'm happy to introduce Lynn Ryan. She is a Westchester native, Ardsley resident, and member of the Westchester Living Team. Welcome, Lynn.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming. Yes, I'm Lynn Ryan. I joined Westchester Living Team when we merged to Compass a few years ago. I work out of the Dobbs Ferry office, so I generally show and sell in the river towns, Irvington, Hastings, Dobbs Ferry, Ardsley, and Tarrytown. I'm also a mom of 3, and I love real estate.
That is wonderful. Wonderful. Last but certainly not least, welcome to Melissa Marcogliese, a Pound Ridge resident, a distinguished agent, and interior designer. Welcome, Melissa.
Hi there. So I am originally a Texas girl, got transplanted to New York in my 20s with some high school girlfriends, and I got stuck here, pleasantly stuck here. Lived in Manhattan and then Greenwich because my husband and I wanted a little bit more grass. And then we just randomly fell in love with our house. It's a quirky farmhouse, and that's what I love, sort of Pippi Longstocking aesthetic. And we landed in Pound Ridge, and it's gorgeous. Northern Westchester is fabulous. And I think one of the things we're going to touch on today is it's a great weekend spot. It's sort of a Hamptons feeling without a beach, but we have hiking trails, farm to table, microbreweries, bands. It's just a great lifestyle. My neighbors have horses, and you're only an hour and a half or an hour and 20 minutes to Midtown Manhattan. It's unbelievable here.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Welcome. So let's jump right in. Many buyers are looking to move to Westchester. So can you share with us, each of you, what's happening in the Westchester market?
Jen, you want to go?
Sure. I will take the Southern Westchester perspective. It's a perennial favorite given the proximity to New York City. And obviously during the pandemic, people have made different decisions in terms of their housing needs, but there's still a lot of people who are using the commute as a primary focus. Like all of Westchester, there's a lot of diversity in terms of locations. So you can be in a small village like Larchmont, coastal, or you can be in New Rochelle, which is an urban suburban feel. People are drawn to the area for the ease of commute, for the coastal living, for the walkable downtowns. You're not going to have what you have in Northern Westchester vis-a-vis land, but you do have the tight knit neighborhoods, and again, walkability for people who are sort of on the fence, city, suburbs. It's a nice transition because it sort of checks a lot of boxes in that regard.
You're muted.
You want to jump in and talk a little bit, Sari, about the market in general?
Sure. I mean, you can't get out of the way of hearing how real estate in suburban times anyway is pacing ever since last year. I think what's left out a little bit is that when we started real estate entree into the market of 2021, before COVID hit and affected demand, we were already up in many areas. There was momentum going into COVID. There was that, excuse my language, that oh shit moment, I think, for about 2 or 3 weeks in January and March, where no one had any idea what was going to go on. It doesn't matter where you lived, whether you were in the city or you were in Long Island or Westchester or New Jersey or Connecticut, Texas, it doesn't matter. Nobody really had any type of idea of kind of, what's going to happen. And then I think for Westchester specifically, and if you look at the trends, Westchester, Connecticut, New Jersey, Long Island, it's kind of had the sprawl in that. In terms of demand, it was kind of in that order. The Hamptons are different. I don't consider Hamptons Long Island. It's just an entirely different, it's on Long Island, but it's an entirely different feel. You saw this huge move. I can't stay where I am anymore. I can't be, in 800 square feet with my family because we're not leaving. So obviously we all saw that bump, but we thought going into 2021, it would calm down a little bit. It just really hasn't. And depending on where those markets are, and we kind of focus in areas that are a bit more desirable in what Jen had touched on, first and foremost, because of commute. Many of our towns have trains, and those trains go directly to Grand Central. So as a comparison to Penn Station going into Grand Central, it's a very, very different experience. But having that ability to get in is super important. Then you add the public school systems that we have in Westchester are pretty stellar. Everyone can do their, research as to what school fits for them most. And we won't really get into that because it's an ethical situation. So we can certainly help people, from a parental standpoint. But if you look at Westchester, we're known for having some pretty good school systems. So you add that, you add the demand to leave, plus you add the scarcity of inventory. So, we haven't had this little inventory since the 70s in Westchester. And that fact is it's all over Newsweek. I just read it there. It was in New York Times a while ago. You add the scarcity of inventory plus the demand is a storm for suburban real estate. And we've been really trying to help our buyers navigate that the best that we can. And it's been a bit uncomfortable. Everyone in this call certainly has stories where there's been bidding situations, or there's been, sellers who maybe had cold feet where deals were going through, and then sellers maybe had some family that was still in the city before, but maybe came home and they didn't have the ability to sell. So there's been a lot of different things and nuances that have gone through it, which is why I think our team has done so well. Is because I can't tell you exactly what's going on from an inventory standpoint or a pacing standpoint in Dobbs Ferry, but Lynn can. And if someone's looking to move up to Bedford and they're looking for a big, beautiful home, I might not have all the stats on that, but Melissa does. And if someone says, I need Scarsdale suicide, I'm going to live there, I'm going to pay whatever it is, I'm going to pay the tax, it doesn't matter. We have, obviously Jen and some other teammates that aren't on here that kind of fit the bill in other markets.
That makes a lot.
I think also another piece with that's interesting is that prior to the pandemic, I think people were more set on one community because they had a dream community. That's where they were headed. And now, because of what Sari's talking about, the lack of inventory and the competition, the net is cast a bit wider. So you might be looking in a few different places and not necessarily in the same geography. So again, that lends itself to our expertise because we are all of Westchester. We can help people navigate the different considerations.
Well, then that is an excellent segue from what you're saying and what Sari's saying from the scarcity, and let's learn about those neighborhoods so we can get out there and find a house. So Sari, you want to get us started with about your areas, what you cover, and a little bit about those neighborhoods?
Sure. So I live in Chappaqua, New York. So I'm like the southern part of Northern Westchester, if that makes any sense. Right, Melissa?
That is right.
He'll challenge me and says, I don't live in northern Westchester, but I do, I promise. So the area that I specifically cover the most would be Chappaqua, Armonk, Briarcliff, Pleasantville, kind of that, and into Katona, but that kind of corridor. Someone in the panel, I think it was JoJo, had asked, like, what's the trend, or like, where are people looking to move? It's interesting because if COVID's taught us anything, we can kind of work from wherever we are. Being able to be a remote worker, remote learner, remote anything outside of the social aspect has really, changed the need to be 30 minutes, 20 minutes, 40 minutes, whatever the case may be from the city, because the thoughts are perhaps I'm not going to be in 5 days a week. My quality of life has changed, i.e. I'm going to be able to work home more, not commute as much, but I'm also looking for more. I don't want to have, that 2,600 square foot house, which was the trend. 26 to 3,500 square feet was what people wanted. And that hindered northern Westchester, really did, because we have bigger homes in general, bigger homes with more land. And we're finding that that's actually much more preferred from a trend standpoint. We're also finding that people want pools. Now pools and were a detriment for people with young children. They were like, I'm scared, I need to fence it, I don't want a pool. And we're finding right now that, people want their own kind of compound. So, where they can, if this happens again, they have their movie theaters, they have their, or viewing rooms, wine tasting, refrigerators, whatever it is on the scale of your budget, land, pool. So each of our communities are really different. So it's hard to macro give you everything. Chappaqua is a pretty liberal town in general. I would say we have Clinton on one side and we had Cuomo on the other. So it's a pretty liberal place. Most people move specifically here for the school system and then the community. It's an extremely tight-knit community. You don't have to be necessarily involved in it, but if you do, there's a place for you. It's a pretty active space. And the school system, we have 3 elementary schools, 2 middle schools, and 1 high school. It's really the number one pulling point to get people to move here is really the ratings of the school for sure, and the community. Armonk has extremely, Byram Hill School District has really great ratings, as does Briarcliff. Armonk, the difference with Chappaqua is from a commuting standpoint, Armonk doesn't specifically have a train station. People go to North White Plains, and we can get into the specifics if someone is interested in that, but Chappaqua does. So it's kind of a difference there. And then, we'll get into this at some point. The tax is different. The houses in Armonk are a little bit more expensive than Chappaqua, but the taxes are lower. So it's kind of a wash from that perspective. And Briarcliff, just down the street from Chappaqua on the other side, is, a very small, wonderful community. Great schools like that as well, very active and involved parents as well. Pleasantville is somewhere in between, but it kind of is all, the towns kind of all go into each other. So that's kind of a short snapshot of my section.
Thank you for that. Jen, would you share a little bit more about the areas that you focus on? I know you mentioned them, but maybe you can dig in a little deeper.
Sure. I'll start by talking about Larchmont and Marinette. Larchmont is a village in conjunction with Marinette, part of this Marinette school system. What makes the town unique is obviously the access to the sound. If you live in Larchmont 10538, you have eligibility to join the Manor Park Beach, which is a favorite for families. They have Friday night family theme night at the beach, which is just an amazing time for kids and a chance to meet your neighbors. One of the other highlights is the Walkable Downtown. We have a lot of Brooklyn to Larchmont buyers because they want that park slope feel where they can walk from their house, get coffee, get their kids' haircut at the barbershop, go to the park, go to the farmer's market, walk to the train, walk their kids to school. It's not that you're going to get away with not having any cars, but having one car and walkability is a possibility. Marinette has the same type of feel, but there's also some neighborhoods that are a little bit more remote, and by remote meaning like 2 or 3 minutes in a car to the center of town, where you might be in Orienta on the water. There are a lot of beach clubs, pool clubs, golf clubs, lots of avenues for outdoor recreation. Rye is like that as well. You have access to nature in addition to the beaches. There are the marshlands where you can walk along nature trails, go to the beach. So you have sort of a combination of that suburban neighborhood feel, but also some access to nature and the beaches. Scarsdale, main difference, you don't have the coast, but you do have a beautiful downtown. You have the Scarsdale Municipal Pool Complex, which, on paper sounds like a public pool, but when you're there, it feels like your own little country club. It backs up to Saxon One's golf course. It's another great resource for families moving out from the city. Another good point that, some of us might have experienced when we moved up here is a lot of these communities have Newcomers Clubs, which are really helpful when you're moving up from the city. It's a great place to meet other people, have organized activities, and just show community spirit. So again, sort of like Sari was saying with Chappaqua, all these communities are very active, and there's an avenue for you to get involved regardless of what your interests are. And if there isn't, you can start your own club and someone will join along. Lots of positive energy.
That's wonderful. Someone just asked you to repeat again the place that you said that was like Brooklyn walkability. Was that Larchmont?
Larchmont has that cachet because you do have these neighborhoods that the schools are sort of in the center of town. So if you're wanting to walk your kid to school and then continue on to get a coffee and go to the train station, you have that sort of ease of walkability.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I'm like picturing all of these places and I feel like I'm going on a great vacation right now to Westchester. Lynn, can you share with us next about the areas that you focus on?
Yes. So I work out of the Dobbs Ferry office. My children went through the Ardsley School District. So most of these schools in the river towns are smaller schools. So close-knit, everybody knows everybody. We also, each town, we're all very close. So not necessarily walkable, but short drive. Most of them have a train. If they don't, it's a short drive to the train. If you think about, if someone asked about Brooklyn, I would say some of my clients like Hastings for that reason. There's a lot of walkability, or a lot of the neighborhoods you can walk to the train, you can walk to town. If you can't walk, it's a short drive. For sure, it's real cute. Tarrytown has a really cute little neighborhood and little shops, coffee shops and great little restaurants. Dobbs Ferry has the waterfront. It's really a great community. We all sort of are one big river towns with our separate school districts, but we all sort of intermingle together as the river towns. Like, in Ardsley, there isn't a train, but each community you can get to a train very quickly. It's a really nice place to live. I mean, our taxes are a little higher than Northern Westchester, but we are a little closer to the city. Most of my clients are from the city, so it's all relative. They'll pay less to come to Westchester or Lower Westchester and have a little grass. Maybe if they're coming from a building, they're looking for somewhere that they just don't have to share laundry. So sometimes it's a little tiny thing that is making them come. Sometimes it's something larger, but they also still love the city, so they don't want to be too far. And some of them are going back to work in the city.
Then can you talk a little bit just about the price points, Jen? And I really didn't get into that in our market, but I feel like you talked about the taxes being a little bit higher, but I feel like the house prices are just a little bit lower. Can you talk about that a bit?
I mean, definitely, like our in the 7s, 8s you can get a pretty nice house. Of course, if you go, closer to $1 million, even nicer, maybe even have a pool, a larger piece of property. But you definitely can move into the river towns with a $750,000-$800,000 budget.
And I would say in my market, that's virtually impossible. You can get something potentially under $1 million, but in general, it's going to be closer to 1.5 to get, like a 4-bedroom house. And Larchmont's is always super competitive. This year is exceptionally worse. And same goes for Scarsdale. Rye, hit or miss depending on the house. But I would say for, 1, 2, 1, 3, a lot of these homes now are 3-bedroom homes and people are paying, 10, 15%, possibly more over asking bidding against 10, 15 other people to get into those homes. So you do need to be mindful that when you see homes online, we all love to look online and see these homes, that they're not necessarily trading at that price point. So, generally what I tell my buyers is that if you're looking at a house, you might want to look a couple $100,000 under your budget so that you have some room to be successful in this market, because prices are trending upwards.
That's also in river towns. If someone really only wants to spend $8 or spend $850, they should look, $750 or $7. Most houses have multiple offers and going over asking.
Good advice. Sari, do you want to talk a little bit about pricing in your neck of the woods?
Sure. I mean, I think historically, you always got a bit of a better deal in northern Westchester than you did in southern Westchester. That's no different. We're still less expensive, but our prices, based on the storm I explained to you before of inventory being so anemic and demand being so high, we're much higher. So we're finding specifically the same types of bidding situations in Chappaqua, specifically Armonk and Briarcliff, that kind of mirror what's happening in southern Westchester. But we're not, maybe homes that we're trading at 1.1 are trading a little bit closer to 1.3, kind of in that area. I think the hot spot for Chappaqua, like the median sale price used to be in the nines. I want to say you could certainly get something in the eights, but you can certainly get something for 3 or 4 million. But the median, that spot was really 9 to or 850 to 1.2, 1.3. And we're just finding, that's been elevated. It has, where you would get, 4,500 square feet is going to be 1.4, 1.5 plus at this particular time. May need some work, may not. And so the negotiability factor is really low. And you can kind of see that empirically when you look at the days on market have gone down just so much in all of these markets. And it's no different, a little bit different, I think. And Melissa will talk about that next, just that the flow of business up in that Katona North, kind of how it might just be like a little bit different pace, but the prices are kind of reflecting the demand the same way that we are, because her market has dual interest. You don't necessarily move to Chappaqua specifically or Larchmont specifically as your second home. It's your primary for the most part. She has 2 different markets going on there as well. So that kind of adds to the demand.
Great. Thank you for that. Melissa, let's turn to you and share about your area.
So I basically focus on northern Westchester. I nicknamed it #NoWe so that people would sort of respond to it in the city. I do think that
Hashtag what?
#NoWe, NOWE, like Soho or
I love
something
it.
like that. So #NoWe. So what I want to say about northern Westchester, and Sari and I definitely have a debate going back and forth about northern Westchester, or #NoWe, is it is not suburban. You do not move here for a suburban experience. I think the New York Times quoted me last year saying, like, northern Westchester, suburban is a dirty word. So that really differentiates northern Westchester, I think, from some of the other Westchester towns. Like I said, my neighbors do have horses. People move here for a sort of a property experience in the sense that, they're looking for tennis, they're looking for pool, they're looking for somewhere they can have, a garden of some sort, like a real garden with, every vegetable in the world. But we do have this special little area called Katona. It's a village. And I think that it mirrors Bedford. It mirrors Brooklyn or Brooklyn Heights to a T. And that's what people say. Katona is in the process of getting sewers as we speak. People will be able to opt in. And when that happens, it will be huge. It will also be huge for the village because more restaurants can come in. And we know when restaurants come in, then stores come in. So that's a great thing for the post-COVID world, especially with summer on the horizon. The town every Friday night has a band under the gazebo. People bring their chairs, they eat outside. It has just a really great vibe here. It's a little slower than some of the other Westchester towns. And we do actually, your money does go further. If you're willing to ride that train 20 more minutes past some of the other suburbs, your money will go further. And people here are buying a lifestyle. You're not really buying a house, you're buying a lifestyle. And so I think that's something that you need to remember when looking in Northern Westchester. Sari is correct. I do have, my business now is probably about 60% full-time and 30% weekenders. But I think with COVID and sort of people changing their lifestyle, what they're realizing is they can live out here, maybe 3 days a week or 4 days a week and be in the city 3 days a week. And they don't mind that extra 20 minutes. And I'm not an accountant, and accounting is not my strong suit, or taxes aren't my strong suit. But I think when any Westchester town, when you're living outside of the city, your tax rate changes somehow, some way. If you're 3 and 4 or 4 and 3, you definitely need to speak to a professional about that. But I think that does help. Northern Westchester is just gorgeous. I mean, just to sort of tell a quick story, I had 2 guys that have 2 twin 9-year-old boys who lived in Southern Westchester with me for 3 years, and they just kept sort of going back to the city because they didn't want to give up that lifestyle of, sports games and concerts and walkability. COVID hit and they said, find us something fast. So I found them a farm. They came out here and they said to me, why haven't you told us about Northern Westchester? I said, are you guys crazy? I've been telling you about it for 3 years. They came out here, they fell in love with the house in 1 month, bought a property, and they have a farm now and they're never going back. So he says to me every day, it's like Alice in Wonderland out here. He's like, how come it's magical? How come I didn't know about it? And Northern Westchester, when I talk about Northern Westchester, it is North Salem, South Salem, Walkabuck, Katona, which is our village, and that's where the train is, and Bedford. And it's really the best kept secret because, like I said, it's a Hamptons alternative. If you don't want a beach, it offers the same feeling. It's a laid back vibe. It's amazing. That's really, I don't know, as far as price goes, we have everything from probably 800 up to 15 million. It's just how much land you want and how big of a house you want.
Wow. That sounds dreamy. Now, when you say it's not suburban, it's not suburbia, what do you mean by that?
Well, people here, I mean, a friend of mine that moved here, she was scared to come outside of the city. She was a city girl, 110%, I think Mary Tyler Moore with a child, right? So she was like, this was not her thing. It was either going to be in the city, and then she was going to have a weekend house, like up in the Catskills, like Woodstock, something very groovy. And another one of our friends moved here and she came out to visit and she said, I didn't even know this existed. She's like, I would have never moved to a suburb. It didn't fit her. Suburbs are great and they're wonderful, but for her personality type, that's not what she was looking for. Within a month, she had purchased a house out here. She wanted to have a pool. She wanted to have a garden where she could grow vegetables and, feed 1 million people. And she just didn't know that existed. She wanted sort of dirt country roads with people riding horses, had no idea it's an hour and 15 minutes, an hour and 20 minutes out of New York, that you have all this like beautiful wilderness out here in Northern Westchester. And so that's what I mean by it's not suburban. Yes, Katona Village are like row houses in Brooklyn, and it's adorable and it's fantastic. But most people come out here, they're looking for more of a rural experience.
Got it. Terrific. Thank you. That's you really create a wonderful picture. So share with me, each of you, what are the nuances of buying in Westchester that may be different from buying in other places? Who wants to kick us off on that one, Jen?
One aspect of it, especially if people have been looking in places like New Jersey or Connecticut, our buying process is very different. You get an accepted offer, then you do inspections. Once inspections are complete, you go to the contract phase. It's not a situation where you get an accepted offer, then you get contracts, you sign contracts, and you have an inspection period or an attorney review period. Here, it really is a race from accepted offer through the inspections to the contract signing, because until both parties sign contracts, it's not a done deal. And most times sellers will continue to show while you're inspecting and your attorney's reviewing. So that's one major difference.
To that point, my mother, who is also a realtor, gave me this term, and I always thought it was crazy. I'm like, what is the difference? This is semantics of words, but it's really not. She said, where we have an accepted offer, we said the offer was accepted. She says, is it though? Or is it more acceptable?
Right.
And it's true. my business is 50-50 in terms of buyers to listings at this point. And I just had a bidding situation in Chappaqua where I got 11 offers. And it had gone to a highest and best sort of situation. We had chosen the offer that made the most sense for the buyers. And by the way, and we can get into specifics if someone has questions about it, why terms sometimes are more important than price, because they're everything goes into kind of what your offer is. So we accepted an acceptable offer. And someone came back after the bidding process who lost. And Jen and I have this happen on the daily, where someone else comes in and they're like, yeah, what do you mean we lost? I'm going to give you so much more money that you're going to have to look at me again. And depending on whether that seller has, I accepted one or the offer isn't that big difference. And again, that's specifics. It was acceptable at that time, but someone else came up with something was a bit more acceptable. So, it's nuances of words. And again, I dismissed all of that initially, but it's true. It's not over until you're in contract, and that process kind of goes on from there. And if there was somebody who is interested about anything, specifics of a town in the process and all of that, we're happy to go over that. But as Jen said, we are not an escrow state. So nothing is held for you until your earnest deposit is in. And that is not until after that inspection period. We do our due diligence first. And those homes are typically shown the entire time until that contract period.
Can I add something to that really quickly? I think what is important too, what I always tell my buyers is that don't mess around. Like, everybody thinks that real estate is a game, even in this crazy market, and it's not a game. To me, it's so black and white. It's like, if you want a house, you need to step up right at the beginning now, because there are so many people you sort of in the wings and waiting around. You need to step up right at the beginning, right when you've come to see a house. You need to say whether you want the house or not, and you need to come up right to what the people are asking. And I think sellers respond to people who are transparent. The package, like Sari was saying, that the terms are excellent, but also too, there's no funny business involved. So if you love a house, make an honest and upfront offer right away. Don't try to get it for $10,000 less or $5,000 less, because it's not going to happen.
Good advice. Good advice. Anyone else want to chime in on anything else? That's very important information and very different information than it could be in other parts of New York metro area. So thank you for that. So what should someone look for when they're looking for an agent when they want to move to Westchester? What are some of the key things that you think are important when finding an agent?
There has to be trust first and foremost, and there has to be compatibility. And without compatibility, you're likely not going to trust the person. It's interesting because I've been in sales my whole life. Prior to this, I sold something else. But it was a different relationship. I was dealing with somebody who was spending other people's money. I was in advertising. So I dealt with somebody who, was spending money for Coke. It wasn't theirs. So the connection was a little bit disjointed, in a sense that if you overpaid or you underpaid or you weren't perfectly in, but you got the media package and it worked, you moved on, you went to bed, and that was it. So this is a really personal purchase. It's arguably going to be the biggest one you make at this particular time. And then if you go on and sell it and do something else. So you need to find someone who you truly feel is your advocate and that you trust and has your best interests in mind. In a market like this, it's very simple to feel commoditized as a buyer. And you go into a process and they're like, you have to spend this, you have to buy it now, and that's it. Oftentimes, and it's a really big piece of our team, and we spend a lot of time talking about it, is that you need to personalize the experience. And it's really important to understand that just because that house on paper might look perfect, when you go through it and you have it inspected, because it's really important to do that, guys. Lots of people are waiving that type of process in this process. You have no idea what something looks like under the hood unless you look. Paint covers a lot of things that we can't always see, and our eyes are not going to always see. And once it's yours, the liability is fully on you to do that. You need to be with someone who's not going to push you to buy something because it's easy just to get you in a house right now, versus working with somebody who's actually going to advocate for you, for your family, listen to the things that you're looking for, not necessarily steer you to a town because there's more inventory in it, necessarily because it's not the right one for you. So there's a lot that goes into that relationship building.
Yes, very important points. Thank you for that.
I think also too, just adding another thing is that what's wonderful, and I think they mentioned it about being part of this team, because I was not on this team and they luckily pulled me onto this team. And what I love about this team is that we have someone in every market. And I think in a market where it's crazy like this, a lot of agents will go all over. I think you really need to be with somebody that either lives in the town or knows the town somehow. An agent from New Jersey who has a New York license should not be bringing buyers to Katona or Chappaqua or Larchmont. You need to work with somebody who has some sort of relationship to that town, especially for a seller when you want someone to list your house, but for a buyer, because I don't know certain things that Lynn knows in Dobbs Ferry. Lynn doesn't know things that Jen knows in Scarsdale and Larchmont. So I think it's really important. I cannot stress, even though it's your friend or it's, someone you've known or, you work with them, maybe they can work with a local agent, like they can team up together, but you have to work with somebody that is attached to the town where you want to live.
And I would also segue on that to the vendor component as well. The attorney piece is critical for this whole process. So, using your uncle who will give you the free attorney situation. No, you want to use a local attorney who's used to doing this. And this is their bread and butter. They do it all day, every day. They have relationships with the other attorneys. The biggest hiccups I think any of us have had recently have been when the attorney is not knowledgeable about the Westchester real estate market. We're paced really fast right now. So if you have an attorney that doesn't work weekends, that's an issue too. And, again, I think part of why you choose a certain agent is the team that we have. And one is our Westchester Living Team. We have each other, but we also have trusted attorneys and inspectors. And a question I get all the time is, well, why are you recommending this inspector? What do you get out of it? I get zero, other than knowing that my clients are going to have a smooth process, knowing that even when they're in the house, if there's an issue, they can call the inspector. And, someone was asking in the chat, like, what do I do with my house? I'm used to being in an apartment. Having an inspector that has inspected your house who can then tell you about maintenance tips and this and that, critical. But again, attorney, the most important piece in all of this.
Yeah. And just to Jen's point, I mean, it's true. You hire us, but you get our cabinet, right? And they've been vetted. So for example, someone on this call had an immediate need for an inspection, immediate need. And if you don't have, because she'll get likely bumped, literally, there'll be somebody else who will inspect that house faster. And if you don't have that relationship to get that appointment, it jeopardizes your information. If you don't have an attorney who is thorough but quick, thorough and long, it's tough. I mean, we're getting, or looking for things. Sometimes, people look for problems, i.e. they'll look at a contract and, they have to just mark it. And I get that. And that all happens. And it's not all attorneys, certainly, but having vetted so many, we know who's going to work on Saturday. We know that if there's 2 more showings going on after we have an acceptable offer, we need to kind of move faster. And we've kind of vetted our people to know. We know that if it's a first time, like I know if I have a first time home buyer who needs their handheld, and which is often, by the way, you need a personality and a skill set that can do that. That isn't just going to have you be, again, a commodity, a piece of paper. It's a transaction. Here's the contract. So you but if you know someone who's been doing it a long time, who doesn't need that finessing, you kind of go someplace, or quite frankly, doesn't want it. You kind of refer them to somebody else. So again, it all comes down to that trust of picking that right, advocate.
Really great point. And also a great point is people think that because they can go searching online, they don't need an agent. And all of these things you're bringing up are really important to underline why you need an agent to be able to help you, because there are so many nuances.
And even if you wanted to use your friend's attorney or your friend's inspector, they might be good. We would help you to know what questions to ask them. Just like Jen said, is your attorney working weekends? Can I text them when I have a question? Are they going to, only work 9 to 5? Your inspector, how quickly am I going to get my inspection report? Even if you've waived your inspection and you're doing your inspection for your own purposes, you still want him to be quickly doing it. How quickly can I get an appointment? So we would help you with the questions to ask any attorney or ask any inspector so that we're just knowledgeable.
Terrific. So what you've been talking about kind of segues to my final question for you is, you have a large team there. So I wanted to know what some of those benefits are, and you're already kind of sharing some of those, but what are some of obviously having one another that are all, focused on particular areas. But what else can you share about the benefits of having a large team?
Can I just say that I think that everybody brings a different skill set to this, where, I look to Sari I call her my brain, because my focus, what? Is that a secret? Don't tell anybody?
No. I just feel bad because my brain's,
Yeah, no, but my skill set is interior design background. I basically can walk into a house and have a vision right away of what it can be and what kind of lifestyle that it can provide for my clients. So I think that's a skill set that I can provide to my team. If someone calls me and says, what's the number one white paint color? What do I need to do this? I'm so sorry. Here's another client calling me right now. Sorry, I don't even know how to turn it off. See, I need my brain. I need Sari.
Hot agents never get a break.
Right, never get a break. But I think that everybody brings something really important. And for me, it's bringing a vision. And I can help my team members when they call me, like I said, with a paint color, or what do we put on this kitchen, or do we need to change the knobs? And each of them brings something to my business, which in turn helps the client.
Great. I love that. Thank you for that. Anyone else want to share more about?
In the river towns, many times we don't see oil tanks. I mean, sometimes we see sewers, we don't see septic. So if we just happen to have a client that has decided to go a little north, we'll go with them to Yorktown or Cortland Manor. And sometimes we will see an oil tank or septic. So we can reach out to Melissa or Sari and ask, how do we, and answer the questions that our clients have about that, and be confident in giving them the answers, because we don't always know them, but we know where to get the answers for them.
Great point. Well, thank you for this. We have so many questions. I would love to get to some of those questions that we have people asking. So let me jump right into it. And by the way, I did put everybody, all of the Jennifer, Sari, Lynn, Melissa, all of their emails right in the chat. You'll also get an email tomorrow with all of their contact information as well. So you can reach out to them directly and ask additional questions as well and get started. So yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna add one thing.
Of course,
we are the Westchester Living Team, but at least 4 or 5 of our agents do practice in Connecticut. Connecticut and Westchester are so close.
Yeah.
And there's so many similarities, plenty of differences, but certainly plenty of similarities. And we have, we also have a presence out of our Greenwich office. I have an agent right now who's working with a buyer that I don't do Connecticut. I'm licensed there, but I don't practice. For New Canaan, we have somebody else who's working with somebody in Greenwich. And, it's important just to add that a little bit because no one's all things to all people. Hence, I won't do Connecticut because I just won't particularly do a phenomenal job, but we certainly have people that do.
Perfect. Thank you. And that honesty is wonderful too.
Yeah.
Not pretending like, oh yeah, I know everything. You don't need anybody else, but knowing that you're going to give them the honest truth and put them in the hands of someone who's an expert.
And there's a lot of our industry that claim, I am Westchester. I am not Westchester. I am my section of Westchester. My team delivers it. And our team is structured that way on purpose. So if someone wants to look in Westchester, we will put you in touch with that specialist in that area. And this isn't by accident. This team was designed specifically to cover all of that. We have people who live in Rybrook who do that specific area, particularly well. I'm just using that because we don't have that section on here, that Harrison on here, but we definitely do cover it. Okay.
So really, if you're interested from Connecticut to all of Westchester and Connecticut, this is your team. You can reach out to them, and if not one of these 4 wonderful women, they'll put you in the right hands. So we do have a couple of questions about people who are 55 and over and are looking for a place to live, but schools aren't the important piece. So they're looking for an area that might have lower taxes. What would you recommend for something like that, where they want to be in Westchester, but schools just aren't an issue?
There's some different options for sure. Just in general, the communities, and I can only speak for Southern Westchester, that have the lowest taxes are places like White Plains and Harrison and Rye. There are also, it depends what people are looking for. If they're looking for communities, that's a different consideration. But if they're looking for ranches or to be, close to a downtown, a lot of people do choose New Rochelle or White Plains for that reason, because they do have a lot of housing stock that sort of lines up with what empty nesters are looking for. There are also, co-ops and condos. There are townhouse developments. But in general, that's the southern.
Yeah, and a little bit further on that, if you are looking like at a condo community or something like that, you're not taxed as single family homes.
Right.
So you're going to be taxed as a condo, which is going to be much less. Conversely, it's a la carte at your house, right? So if you're paying for your landscaping, you're paying for your maintenance, you're paying if there's a roof issue, there's no real HOA fee. I mean, this is an exception. Obviously, there are HOA fees. I have one because I live in one, but that's for my pool. That's not for my roof. So it's just important when you're looking at listings and you're like, oh my God, I can get into Chappaqua. My family lives there. I can pay $8,200 in taxes. It's amazing. But you might be paying $600 or $700 in maintenance fees also. So together that might give you just a different picture. So just to point that out, because sometimes we don't see the maintenance fees when we're on Zillow and all the rest of it.
I mean, that's another reason why they need to sit down with someone like you to be able to say, hey, here's what I have all in. Here's what I can afford monthly. What do I need to look at? And, that's where you can really help them with that too. So fantastic. Thank you for pointing that out. So Steve said, he lives in a co-op building right now, and there's someone who can look over his security, and the concern about jumping into that from a house. How do you do that with a house? Obviously there's security, secure alarms. Are there gated communities in Westchester?
There are. There are.
What else would you recommend? Anything? I mean, I guess that's always the interesting thing of when people are moving from the city or moving from kind of an apartment situation, is just kind of getting used to the new feel of a home.
Yeah, I mean, I think it also depends like what type of neighborhood you're moving to. A lot of times you have neighbors. So, some of the people who are more concerned about this, I've had people who have moved to busier areas where, they don't want acres. They want to be able to look out their window and see that a neighbor is there. And yes, of course, you have gated communities and buildings with concierge and doorman and all of that. But for people who want a single family house, they like to have neighbors if that's like a primary concern.
I also think there's so many security systems now that, even just down to Simply Safe, which I think has like a top rating that you put in yourself, which my friend did it. And I couldn't even believe she did. I was so impressed.
I have it. I did it. I'm
amazing. I mean, I can't, I would need Sari for that. I would need my brain for that. But,
I would tell you to hire someone, but that's
very little hand.
That's why Sari's smart. She's a good delegator. But I just think the thing is like, I have a security system and it's super easy to use. They're so competitive with their monthly pricing now. And they offer like the doorbell, the camera here, the camera there. It's too many cameras. I don't want to.
You have it on your phone, so you can look at your phone.
Yeah, so I don't think security is an issue. I never recommend leaving your front door open. I never really understood that concept, no matter where you are. But some people it's funny. They never even, some people it's a big deal for, some people it's not. But I would just say, look and get a competitive pricing on an alarm system. They monitor you 24 hours a day. And get the doorbell, get the backyard camera, whatever. In my house in Northern Westchester, you know what our security problem is? The deer that comes in my garden at night and the light goes on. That's the biggest problem.
But it's a real concern. I mean, I grew up on Long Island. My husband grew up in Riverdale, and it's a big change, the lifestyle change. I moved him from basically the city to Northern Westchester, and he leaves the house, he puts the alarm on. He does. Chappaqua has a 0.0% crime rate. Nothing happens here. It doesn't matter. It makes him feel better. So, and you live with someone long enough, you get all their habits. I do the same thing now. Not because I think something's going to happen. It's just because that's what we do. So I'm not going to judge it. It just is what it is. And we all can easily get a security system. It's a no big deal. Just make sure it's hooked up to the police, because if you're not, there's really no reason for it. But we can talk about carbon monoxide, alarms. That's a little bit more relevant and important, but I could do that for another time.
I would say I
Your
I
knowledge
just-
is endless. Your knowledge is endless.
Well, I would just say I have a secure, just to add a little humor, I have a security system. So at night when I go to bed, I turn it on and my teenagers can't leave. That's really what the biggest problem I have.
Keeping them in, not out.
Very true. The video will show you their timestamp in and out. I love it. That's great. So someone asked, I think this is a great question. What's the best way to visit these areas to determine, what do you suggest? They said there's so many towns and only so much time on the weekends. What do you suggest people do?
The benefit, or I think for working with a team like this, and Jen and I do this all the time, it's almost like anything else. You have a consultation first and foremost. What are you looking for? If you're looking for walkability, low taxes, you don't need a school district, and you want to be on the water, don't move to Chappaqua. I'm just going to tell you right now. But you have to kind of go through those sorts of conversations first, and then we set up tours. I mean, tours are really, really important. Typically, we do them on Saturdays, not Sundays, because Saturdays there's more going on in towns. So the best way to really get a feel is like have lunch there. Who's sitting next to you? What are they talking about? Are they playing soccer? Do they not play soccer? I like fencing. Is there, there's all these sorts of things. Is there a farmer's market? Farmer's markets are great ways to kind of see who lives in a town and kind of get a feel for the vibe. You're not going to get that really on a Tuesday at 2. You're going to see school bus traffic or whatever the case may be. And you're not really going to see kind of the lifestyle anywhere. So we kind of, we listen, we take obviously information, and based on like kind of the description of what someone's really looking for, there could be, they want diversity. They only want, people who have black dogs. They don't want to deal with people that have Labradoodles. They only like, whatever the case may be that they're looking for, we can't say X town is great for you because they only have Labradoodles. And if you want a Labradoodle town, you can only look there. That's steering. But we understand that you're looking for a town that likes animals. I'm using obviously a basic thing. So where's more environmental, where's more a bit green, where they have more parks, those sorts of things. And we take that information and we set up tours. I mean, there are often times where whatever someone's describing, they're not describing anything that I cover, but they're definitely describing what Lynn covers. Or they're looking for a place for their horses. Well, you need zoning for that. That's definitely going to be something where Melissa's going to excel. They want to be able to walk to town and they want an international feel. That's something that Larchmont can deliver. I know that. So that's something that Jen would do, something of that nature.
Wonderful, wonderful. TJ wanted to know, are there any condos or townhouse developments in Scarsdale or Hartsdale?
Yes, there are. Boulder Ridge is in Scarsdale mailing address. It's in the Ardsley School District, which is in the town of Greenburgh, which is Hartsdale.
There'll be a quiz later.
I just failed.
We need a little map. Yeah. But I mean, I think, what you said in terms of, asking these type of questions, it takes this big and makes it small and you can be focused. So I think that's,
right. Like when you look on Zillow, it's really hard sometimes to figure out what the school district is or what the town is, or that's almost why you need us, especially in the town of Greenburgh, probably others also. The town of Greenburgh doesn't have a post office, so nobody on paper lives in Greenburgh. So there's many mailing addresses that are in Greenburgh, but each of those mailing addresses could be in a different school district.
Interesting.
So
we have a question here where someone is bidding on 7 houses and keeps losing. What would you define as a strong offer and terms? Any advice? I mean, I think, the point here is that is why you need a strong agent, right? Is to be able to sit with you and know the landscape and know to tell you what those terms are.
It is, and they could be different. Ultimately, the macro answer to that is, what is this home worth to you? And if it was $5,000 more and you lost it, are you okay with it? These are questions you have to ask yourself. And how badly do you need to be there in July? Mm-hmm. If the seller specifically says they don't want to close until September and you're pushing July, this is not the house for you. Mm-hmm. So it's just kind of slowing down that process and finding out what are the most important things for you about this home and what are the most important things to the seller about selling it. And it's kind of, a compromise. Everything is a compromise. A negotiation is a compromise. No one really wins and no one really loses.
I also think in this market, more so than others, because as mentioned, Larchmont, we're like this every spring with the bidding wars, but this year feels more frenzied, not to get emotionally attached to a house, because ultimately you will get a house and it's going to work out, but you have to really take this as a unemotional process, which is really hard because it's your family, it's your, life. But at the end of the day, like what Sari's saying, for each house you look at, you have to say, like, what's the highest I would go and not lose sleep over it. And again, not be upset if I don't get it over X amount. And it's going to be a different conversation for each house. There's no one winning strategy. There are many winning strategies, and a lot of it is very location specific.
And flexibility, right, Jen?
Right. You have to be flexible. I mean, it's sad to say, but the sellers in a competitive bidding situation have the upper hand.
You should also be aware of what contingencies you can waive. Speak to your lender. Can you waive the appraisal? Can you make it up if it doesn't appraise? That might be that your offer may look better to another offer, even if your offer isn't the highest offer, if the seller's worried about the appraisal.
And it's important to actually understand what that means if it doesn't appraise.
Right.
Well, and it's getting a little bit more specific than we probably need to for this, but what is that ramification and what is your risk? And that all goes into what is that house worth to you?
Can you even do it? Is it possible that you can even waive your appraisal?
I think too, also another point to add is that with the mortgage rates where they are today being so low, like Jen said, to lose a house over $5,000, is it worth it to you? Because if you go back to your lender and look, that may, I don't know what your rate is, but in what you're buying, but that may only be $100 difference a month in your mortgage payment. So I think that that's important to know, what the rate is. If you can go that $5,000 extra and help you get that house, really $5,000 extra may only cost you $50 more a month or $100 more a month. I don't know. But I think to lose a house over $5,000 is a shame.
Conversely, it's not our job to pressure it, because then it becomes our offer. And we already have a house. So, ultimately we can kind of guide the process, but the offer has to be yours. It has to be the number that you want. I think someone had asked, will we advise on a number that works? To the best of our abilities, 100%. You can't take to account the emotion of someone else who just wants it more, who's willing to literally go all out for it. And that might not be the best decision for you. I've had this. I have a buyer who's lost 5 bidding wars. And it's the same conversation. She's like, what could we have done better? I said, you needed another $45,000 in cash to get this. Was it worth it to you? No, it was so high as it is. I go, then we made the right decision. Losing is really a win. So you have to really think about what makes the most sense. And you need to work with someone who is in it. It's not always a sprint. It can be a marathon. It could be somewhere in between, but you can't feel pressured that you need to buy this house right now because it's convenient. And I see so many people do that. I've heard so many stories of agents being fired or buyers having such remorse about paying too much or overlooking that the AC was disconnected and the system was from 1945. And now they're in the house and they're paying $40,000 to get all this wiring. You just need to make those right decisions. And the way you can really do that is just to have the information in order to do it.
That's great. So this has been phenomenal. You've given us so many good information and so many tidbits. I did share contact information. Just before we go, quick, because a couple of people asked, can we just go around to each of you and just quickly say the towns that you're affiliated with? So Sari, why don't you start us off?
Southern part of Northern Westchester.
Just say the quick towns.
Chappaqua, Armonk, Briarcliff, Katona, and Pleasantville.
Perfect. Jen?
Larchmont, Marinette, Rye, Pelham, New Rochelle, Scarsdale.
Fantastic. Lynn?
Dobbsbury, Ardsley, Hastings, Irvington, Tarrytown. I have gone as far as Ossining, Yorktown, and Cortland Manor also.
Terrific. And Melissa?
Okay, so I'm Pound Ridge, Bedford, Katona, North Salem, South Salem, Wacabuck, and Vista, which is part of South Salem. I also cover, which I fell into as a fluke, but have become pretty aware or pretty knowledgeable about, Cold Spring and Garrison as well.
Don't forget Nyack.
And
Yeah.
also to mention, we do have many more members of our team who are not on the call who live and work out of other communities throughout Westchester. So when we say we are Westchester and we cover the whole county, we don't just cover, we do specialize and give that hyper local touch.
Terrific. Well, thank you, ladies, so much. Melissa, Lynn, Sari, Jen, this has been fantastic.
Thank you.
I'm excited about Westchester. I need to come up there and take a look because it sounds incredible. And I know that a lot of our attendees are really grateful for you sharing so much of your information. As I shared, all of their email addresses are in the chat. You'll also get an email with their contact information. We also recorded this, and the recording will be available on the Schneps Media YouTube channel. So you can go there to be up within 48 hours. You can subscribe to the channel and get an alert that it's up so you can see it again. You can share it with your friends and family. Thank you to the team. I appreciate your being here. Thank you to our attendees for spending some of your afternoon with us. And I wish you all to stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll look forward to seeing you on another webinar. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.